My name is Mira. I'm 15 years old, and I used to think I had everything. I don't say that to brag. Honestly, if you asked the people around me, they'd probably say, Mira was born to shine. I was always on the honor roll. I knew how to put an outfit together. I knew exactly where the spotlight was, and how to be the one who stood out in it. My mornings didn't start with an alarm clock. They started with choosing an outfit. Every piece I wore was carefully considered, down to the silver bracelet on my wrist or the ankle socks I paired with my shoes. Everything had a purpose. I once joked to my mom, I can't eat breakfast until I've picked the right purse. She laughed. She used to be like me. My closet took up almost an entire wall of my room. The hangers were perfectly spaced, my clothes color-coded. I had a little cream chair just for trying on shoes, and a nearly full-length mirror with LED lights running down the sides. To catch every makeup mistake, I used to say. I know. It probably sounds shallow. But to me, fashion wasn't about showing off. It was a part of me, like how an artist picks their paint or a chef chooses their ingredients. How could I be myself without my favorite long black coat or those leather boots I begged Mom to buy all winter? I thought people liked me because I was like that, because I stood out, because I was confident, because I had style. But sometimes, late at night, after I'd wiped off my mascara and brushed out my hair, I'd look in the mirror and see something different. I wasn't sure what it was. Maybe a tired look in my eyes, a small crease near the corner of my mouth, or just this strange feeling of emptiness. I'd push it away, I always did, with a spritz of expensive perfume, a layer of lip gloss, a new Instagram story. Until one day, I couldn't cover it up anymore, and I realized every single thing I thought made me Mira could be taken away in one afternoon. It all started on a Tuesday, right after I stepped out of my classroom and saw my parents waiting in the hallway. No warning, no text, no heads up from my homeroom teacher, just the two of them. Dad in his old striped shirt, Mom in a beige sweater, both looking more tense than usual. And the way they looked at me, it wasn't like any look I'd ever gotten from them before. Not angry, not disappointed, just silent. Heavy, like a verdict waiting to be spoken. I straightened my shoulders, trying to stay calm. "What's going on?" I asked, forcing my voice to sound casual, but my heart had already started to pound, instinctively. Mom didn't answer. Dad just said in a clipped tone, "Let's go home." The whole ride back, no one said a word. Outside the window, bare trees blurred past like the world was slipping by, without inviting me along. I reached for my phone, but Mom leaned over and shut the screen off. "Not right now." That was the moment I knew something serious had happened, and I had a pretty good idea what it was. Emily. I wasn't close to Emily. She was the kind of girl I usually ignored. Cheap clothes, messy ponytail, always sitting at the back of the class. A quiet shadow. And my friends and I, well, we never called her by her name. We had our own nicknames for her. Stuff like Walmart Girl or Retro Rat. I know how that sounds cruel, but at school, stuff like this, it was normal. Everyone joked around like that, right? It's just, maybe I took it too far. The night before, my homeroom teacher had called my parents. She told them about the messages in our private group chat. The pictures I secretly took of Emily and posted with a puke emoji. Even a voice clip where I called her a mole rat pretending to be a student. And then, she told them how Emily had cried. In class, in front of everyone. My parents heard it all. Their faces didn't change, but I could tell they were shattered on the inside. "Why would you do that?" my mom finally asked. I was speechless. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I had too many. Because she was weird, because she never stood out, because whenever she walked into the room, the energy dropped, and I wanted things to stay fun, stay bright. I wanted to laugh. I wanted my friends to think I was funny. I wanted to stay at the center of it all, but I couldn't say any of that out loud. So I just looked down. For the first time in a long time, I had no excuse to hide behind. And then came the punishment. 2 options. 1, no phone, no social media, no hanging out with friends. For how long? We'll decide, Dad said. 2, no fashion, no pretty dresses, no designer bags. My wardrobe would be locked. I'd have to wear old, plain clothes that my mom picked out, also for an unknown amount of time. I didn't hesitate. I chose the second option. It seemed easier, or so I thought. A stupid choice. And that was the moment I truly started losing my world, hanger by hanger. That night, Mom walked into my room with an empty suitcase and a look that was no longer soft or familiar. Without saying a word, she opened my closet, my treasure chest, and began removing each item, folding them neatly, placing them into the suitcase. The white blazer I wore when I got the academic award. The black silk dress I picked so carefully for the dance. The cat-shaped purse I had cried and begged for. One by one, gently, silently, I sat frozen on my bed, at first in shock, then came anger, then fear. Why are you doing this? I didn't do anything that bad, I blurted out. Mom didn't stop. Her only response was the sharp click of a silver padlock snapping shut. My closet was locked, cold and untouchable. Left on my bed were 3 faded tracksuits, 1 pair of worn-out white sneakers, and a few oversized t-shirts stuffed into my drawer. "This is a prison sentence, not a punishment," I muttered, almost screamed, my throat tight with emotion. But no one answered. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection of someone I didn't even want to take outside, let alone bring to school. An oversized gray sweatshirt that swallowed my figure, stretched out sweatpants dragging at the ankles, scuffed shoes. I felt exposed. Not in the way skin shows, but in the way a mask falls off. The shell that once made me feel safe, gone. Dressing up used to be my shield, my way of owning the room. Now I looked like someone who didn't belong in the world I once ruled. As soon as I walked into school, I felt the stares. Not pity, not sympathy, surprise, a few chuckles, and that thin layer of judgment, the same look I used to throw at Emily. Ivy, one of the girls I used to hang out with, passed by and gave me a once-over. She raised an eyebrow. "What's this? Homeless cosplay?" I forced a weak smile. "Nah, my mom did laundry, that's all." A lie, a pathetic, clumsy, humiliating lie. The whole day I couldn't focus in class. I felt like a shadow, lost among the vibrant crowd. No more compliments about how cute I looked. No one asked where I got my outfit. No one stopped to take selfies with me in the courtyard. I had disappeared. No one saw Mira anymore. At least not the Mira I used to be. That night, I cried. Not because of the clothes, not because I was grounded, but because for the first time in my life I realized I didn't know who I was without the things I used to define myself. And the most painful part wasn't losing the image. It was realizing that image was never real to begin with. I don't remember what time I fell asleep. I don't remember how long I cried. All I remember is waking up to soaked pillows and eyes so swollen I didn't even feel like getting out of bed. But I had to go to school. That was part of the deal with my parents. You have to live with your choice every day, no shortcuts. I put on the second outfit, faded black sweatpants and a plain hoodie with no design. No straightened hair, no styling, no makeup. Just me, bare and dull. It felt like my name had been erased from a world I used to stand in the center of. That's when I started to realize something terrifying. I hadn't just lost my clothes. I had lost my sense of self. Because for years, I'd confused who I am with what people see. On the way to school, I got a text from Ivy, my best friend, or maybe my former best friend. It wasn't long, just 2 lines. How long are you planning to dress like that? People are talking a lot. I didn't reply, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know what to say. All the excuses, all the justifications I used to hold on to, they sounded meaningless now. I walked into class just as the bell rang. People looked. Some glanced and turned away. Some whispered, not even trying to hide it. A few elbowed each other and smirked. And then I saw Emily. She was sitting quietly in the corner, reading. No one stared at her. No one talked about her. No one teased. She just sat there, calm, unnoticed, like always. But in that fleeting moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. She glowed, in her own quiet way. I looked down at my outfit and remembered the things I used to say about her. That shirt's probably from the dollar bin. Bet her mom never taught her how to match clothes. Always looks like she time traveled from the 90s. Background character with no dialogue. Each word hit me like a knife scraping against my brain. My stomach twisted, not from hunger, but from something far worse. I was starting to be disgusted with the person I had been. I didn't eat lunch that day. I sat alone, under the shade of a tree, watching everyone laugh and talk in the distance. I opened my phone and scrolled through old photos, me with Ivy and the rest of the girls. Bold red lipstick, heels, standing center stage with lights on me. I used to love those pictures. Used to think they were the peak of worth. But now, looking at them, I didn't see me anymore. I saw a girl performing, a character playing the popular one, cool Mira, the trendsetter of 10th grade. Maybe I played the role too well enough to fool even myself. When I got home, I walked straight into the bathroom. I didn't turn on the lights. I just stared at my reflection in the faint glow from the hallway. I touched my cheek, skin dry from not moisturizing. Dark circles under my eyes from lack of sleep. Chapped lips with no gloss. And strangely, I didn't think I looked ugly. I looked real. And I couldn't tell if that made me feel lighter or more broken. I sat down on the floor, leaning against the door. And for the first time, I didn't cry because of what had been taken from me. I didn't cry because I lost my image. I cried because I had been cruel to someone who never did anything to deserve it. I asked myself if just a few days of wearing ugly clothes could make me feel like I didn't even deserve to be seen. Then how did Emily feel, living with that every day, while I and my friends crushed her self-worth like it meant nothing? I didn't know how to make things right, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay silent anymore. That night, I skipped dinner. I told Mom I wasn't hungry, even though my stomach growled with every breath. But I knew that kind of hunger wasn't from lack of food. It was from the absence of peace. I sat at my desk, chin in hand, staring at a blank sheet of paper. For the first time in my life, I wasn't writing a status, a caption, or some cleverly crafted line to get attention. This time, it was a letter. A letter I had owed for a long time. I wrote it 3 times. The first was too cold. The second sounded like I was blaming my circumstances. It wasn't until the 3rd attempt that I finally sat still, took a deep breath, and wrote without stopping, as if I were speaking to a person, not just a name that had once been a punchline. Emily, this might be the first time I've said your name the right way. No mockery, no fake voice. I hurt you, not just once, but many times, with my words, my actions, and my cruel silence while others joined in. I used to think it was all just a joke. I used to say, everyone gets teased at some point. But now I understand, real fun never comes from making someone else feel small. I don't know what you've had to endure. I can't undo the damage I caused. But I want you to know, I'm ashamed. And I'm deeply, deeply sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. But if one day you want to talk or even scream at me, I'll listen. I'm not writing this to make peace or redeem myself. I'm writing because I need to face who I've been, and I owe you this because I once laughed at someone else's pain. Mira. I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and wrote Emily's name on the front, neatly. No hearts, no doodles, just a sincere apology, at the right time, to the right person. The next morning, I arrived at school earlier than usual. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it might burst as I stepped into the empty classroom. I walked to Emily's desk, moving like a criminal sneaking into the scene of her own guilt. I placed the envelope inside her desk cubby, my hands trembling slightly, then stepped back. I didn't know how she'd react. Maybe she'd toss it in the trash. Maybe she'd read it and rip it up. Or maybe she wouldn't read it at all. But I knew one thing. It didn't matter as much as the fact that, for the first time in a long while, I was being honest. During break that day, I didn't look at Emily. I didn't try to see if she'd read the letter. I just let her be. Something I had never done before. Ivy came up to me and asked, "You okay? You've been acting weird lately." I just nodded. No explanation. No jokes to mend the friendship. Because for the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. That afternoon, when I got home, I saw Dad out in the yard cutting grass. It was such an ordinary scene. After days of tension and silence, it felt almost strange. I stood at the doorway, watching him gently pick up fallen leaves. Not fast, not rushed. Carefully, as if each leaf had its own story. I didn't know if he knew what I'd done that morning. But maybe he didn't need to. At dinner that night, Mom no longer looked at me with cold eyes. She was still stern, but something had softened. While we were washing dishes, she simply said, "Wear a jacket tomorrow. The weather's getting colder." A simple sentence, but to me it felt like a silent hug. I understood. They hadn't fully forgiven me yet, but they saw that I was starting to walk down a different path, slow, clumsy, but genuine. That night I stood in front of the mirror, no designer clothes, no lipstick, no selfie lighting, just me. And for the first time, I didn't hate what I saw. The next day, I came to class as usual, still wearing the simple clothes my mom had left out. No makeup, no accessories, nothing to hide behind. But strangely, I didn't feel ashamed anymore. As I walked past Emily's desk, my heart pounded. She was already seated, and I saw the envelope was gone. I didn't dare look her in the eyes. I wasn't expecting anything either. Some mistakes are too big to hope for forgiveness. But at the very least, I knew I had said what needed to be said. All throughout class that day, I couldn't focus. There were a few moments when Emily's eyes accidentally met mine. Not angry, not warm, just quiet. And I thought, maybe that was enough. That afternoon when I got home, I saw Mom unlocking my closet. My heart nearly dropped to the floor. I froze in the doorway, saying nothing. Just silently watched as she removed the cold silver padlock and opened the double doors that had remained shut for days. She didn't turn around, didn't say a word. She simply took out a dress, not a party dress or a designer piece, but a small floral dress I'd bought back in middle school. One I chose just because I liked it, not because it was trendy. A dress I had shoved to the back of my closet and forgotten. She laid it on my bed, gently, like she was placing an unspoken message. I didn't ask anything, and she didn't need to say a thing. That night, I had dinner with my parents like normal. No one brought up the past, but the air between us had changed. Not full forgiveness, not yet, but something that felt like trust, starting to flicker back to life. After dinner, I washed the dishes like I always did. When I finished drying my hands, Dad walked into the kitchen. He stood beside me for a long moment, silent. I held my breath. Then softly, he said, "I'm not proud of what you did, but I'm proud that you're trying to make it right." I couldn't respond. My throat tightened, full of things I couldn't say. I just nodded, eyes blurred with tears I refused to let fall. That night, I went into my room and opened my closet. All of my clothes were still there, but I didn't rush to them. I didn't reach for the most expensive pieces. I just stood there for a while, then gently picked out a plain white shirt, one I used to think was boring. I folded it carefully and placed it by my bed. Not to wear, but to remind myself I used to value appearances more than who I really was. But I don't want to live that way anymore. Before going to sleep, I turned on my phone, for the first time in days, using it for more than just checking the time. The screen lit up with dozens of unread messages, from Ivy, from my old friend group, from a few people in class. Some were mocking, some were just shallow apologies. Some asked nosy questions, others tried to check in. I didn't reply to any of them, not because I was angry, but because I was learning to rebuild space for myself, not to be liked, but to be real. The next morning, when I walked into class, Emily was already there, in her usual corner seat, but this time, something felt different. As I passed by her desk, she looked up, her eyes steady, her gaze slow, and then she nodded. Just a small nod, no smile, no words. But to me, it meant more than any "I forgive you" ever could. I used to think that if I lost the admiring looks, the compliments, the pretty dresses, and fancy shoes, I would disappear. That no one would have a reason to remember Mira anymore. But I was wrong. I'm still here. Not dazzling, not glamorous, but real. I've started learning how to live without needing to shine, learning how to sit with silence, with emptiness, and with the mistakes I've made. My parents didn't hug me and say, "We're proud of you." Emily didn't run up and say thank you. Nothing ended like it does in the movies. But I understand now. Forgiveness doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it's a softened look, a lock being removed, an old dress laid gently on a bed, a quiet nod, and growing up. It doesn't come from being forgiven by others. It comes from being brave enough to change, even when no one's clapping. Now I still wear simple clothes. I've kept a few designer pieces, not to show off, but to remind myself of who I used to be. But every morning now, when I stand in front of the mirror, I no longer ask, "What will people think?" I simply ask, "Will I live kindly today?" And for me, that's enough.